The Nazi Party, officially known as the National Socialist German Workers' Party (NSDAP), was founded in 1919. It emerged from the German Workers' Party, seizing on the widespread dissatisfaction that followed Germany's defeat in World War I and the onerous conditions imposed by the Treaty of Versailles. Adolf Hitler joined the fledgling party in 1920, rapidly ascending to a position of influence and leadership. After the failed Beer Hall Putsch in 1923, an attempted coup d'état in Munich, Hitler was incarcerated. During his imprisonment, he penned Mein Kampf, a manifesto that expounded his ideas and future plans for Germany. After his release, Hitler set about reorganizing the Nazi Party. Using propaganda and large-scale rallies, he managed to cultivate broad support. The economic struggles and political turmoil brought on by the Great Depression further elevated Hitler's appeal, eventually leading to his appointment as Chancellor in 1933. Once in power, Hitler acted decisively to consolidate his control. The Reichstag fire in February 1933 provided a convenient pretext to quash opposing political parties. Shortly thereafter, the Enabling Act was passed, granting Hitler dictatorial powers and effectively dissolving the Weimar Republic. By the summer of 1934, the Night of the Long Knives, a series of political extrajudicial executions, allowed Hitler to eliminate potential rivals and secure his unchallenged supremacy. Central to Nazi ideology was the belief in the superiority of the Aryan race and the necessity for Lebensraum, or living space. This justified both territorial expansion and the subjugation of other races, particularly Jews and Slavs. Nazi anti-Semitism, deeply ingrained in their ideology, scapegoated Jews as the cause of Germany's myriad problems. This animosity laid the foundation for the Holocaust, the regime's systematic attempt to exterminate the Jewish people. The dictatorial regime was further entrenched by the Enabling Act of 1933, which empowered Hitler to legislate without Reichstag approval. This act was pivotal in transforming Germany's government into a totalitarian regime that stifled all forms of opposition and dissent. The Night of the Long Knives in June 1934 marked a decisive moment in Hitler's consolidation of power, as the violent purge targeted members of the SA Sturmabteilung and other potential threats within the Nazi Party, ultimately strengthening Hitler's grip on both the party and the military. Propaganda, masterminded by Joseph Goebbels, the Minister of Propaganda, was a critical tool in the Nazi arsenal. The regime's control over the media, arts, and information streams allowed it to pervade German society with anti-Semitic and ultranationalist messages. The Nuremberg Laws of 1935 exemplified institutionalized racism under the Nazis, rescinding the rights of Jews and prohibiting marriages between Jews and non-Jews. These laws laid the groundwork for the Holocaust, escalating the persecution of Jews to unprecedented levels. In defiance of the Treaty of Versailles, Hitler began rearming Germany in the mid-1930s. The reinstatement of conscription and the buildup of the military were key elements of his strategy to restore German power. The remilitarization of the Rhineland in 1936 defied the Versailles Treaty, emboldening Hitler and setting the stage for future military aggression. March 1938 saw the Anschluss, the annexation of Austria into Nazi Germany. This event, hailed by the Nazis as the unification of all German-speaking peoples, was a transparent act of territorial expansion and a prelude to subsequent ambitions that would plunge the world into war. November 1938's Kristallnacht, or Night of Broken Glass, marked a significant escalation in violence against Jews. Synagogues were set ablaze, businesses destroyed, and countless Jews were arrested or killed. This pogrom was a grim precursor to the genocide that would follow. The invasion of Poland on September 1, 1939, by Nazi Germany marked the onset of World War II. Employing blitzkrieg tactics, German forces swiftly overwhelmed Polish defenses. The invasion prompted Britain and France to declare war on Germany, setting off a conflict that would span the globe until 1945. Nazi Germany's early successes continued into 1940, with the invasion of France. German forces bypassed the heavily fortified Maginot Line, advancing rapidly through the Ardennes and leading to the fall of Paris. This victory affirmed Nazi dominance in Western Europe. Hitler next set his sights on Britain, leading to the Battle of Britain and the subsequent Blitz from 1940 to 1941. Despite relentless bombing campaigns, the Royal Air Force successfully repelled the Luftwaffe, preventing a Nazi invasion of Britain. June 1941 marked the launch of Operation Barbarossa, the massive invasion of the Soviet Union. While the initial advances were rapid, the brutal winter, staunch Soviet resistance, and logistical challenges culminated in a devastating defeat for the Germans. This campaign marked the beginning of the Nazi decline. The Holocaust was the systematic extermination of 6 million Jews by the Nazis. The final solution, implemented in 1942, aimed to eradicate the Jewish population in Europe through mass shootings, gas chambers, and forced labor. This genocide is one of history's most horrific atrocities, driven by Nazi racial ideology. The Wannsee Conference, held in January 1942, was a meeting of senior Nazi officials to discuss and coordinate the implementation of the final solution. Led by Reinhard Heydrich, the conference formalized plans for the genocide of the Jews, leading to the construction of extermination camps and mass killings. By 1942, Nazi Germany controlled vast territories across Europe, from France in the west to the outskirts of Moscow in the east. The Nazi regime appeared unstoppable, with its military dominating the continent. However, the tide of the war began to turn as the Allies mounted increasingly effective resistance. Despite the oppressive nature of the Nazi regime, resistance movements existed within Germany. Groups like the White Rose and individuals like Claus von Stauffenberg risked their lives to oppose Hitler. These movements, though often crushed, demonstrated that not all Germans supported the Nazi regime. In Nazi Germany, women were expected to focus on motherhood and supporting the family. In line with the regime's ideology of Kinder, Kusch, Kirche, children, kitchen, church, the regime encouraged large families to increase the Aryan population. While women were excluded from significant roles in public and political life, the Hitler Youth was a key tool in indoctrinating young Germans with Nazi ideology. Membership became compulsory, and the organization emphasized militarism, loyalty to Hitler, and racial purity. Education was also heavily influenced by Nazi beliefs, with a curriculum focused on physical fitness, history, and racial studies. The SS, Schutzstaffel, and the Gestapo were instrumental in enforcing Nazi policies. The SS, initially Hitler's personal bodyguard, grew into a powerful organization overseeing concentration camps and the Holocaust. The Gestapo, the secret police, suppressed opposition through fear, arresting and torturing perceived enemies of the state. The Waffen-SS was the armed wing of the SS, separate from the regular German army, Wehrmacht. It was composed of highly trained and ideologically driven soldiers, known for their brutality and loyalty to Hitler. The Waffen-SS played a significant role in the Eastern Front, committing numerous war crimes during the conflict. Nazi Germany established a vast network of concentration camps, starting with Dachau in 1933. These camps were used to imprison political opponents, Jews, and other groups deemed undesirable by the regime. Auschwitz, the largest and most infamous camp, became the epicenter of the Holocaust, where over 1 million people were murdered. Nazi doctors conducted horrific medical experiments on prisoners in concentration camps, often without consent and with lethal outcomes. These experiments included exposing inmates to extreme conditions, testing drugs, and attempting to change eye color. The most infamous were those conducted by Dr. Joseph Mengele at Auschwitz. The Battle of Stalingrad was a turning point in World War II. Nazi Germany's invasion of the Soviet Union reached its climax here, with brutal urban warfare leading to massive casualties on both sides. The eventual Soviet victory marked the beginning of the German retreat from the Eastern Front, and was a major blow to Nazi ambitions. On June 6, 1944, Allied forces launched the D-Day invasion of Normandy, opening a second front in Western Europe. This operation was critical in weakening Nazi Germany, as it forced the Germans to fight a two-front war. The successful invasion led to the liberation of France and set the stage for the Allied advance into Germany. On July 20, 1944, a group of German officers, led by Colonel Claus von Stauffenberg, attempted to assassinate Hitler with a bomb placed in his conference room. The plot failed, and the conspirators were quickly executed. This event highlighted the growing opposition to Hitler within the German military, as the war turned against Germany. As the Red Army pushed westward after Stalingrad, Nazi Germany's Eastern Front began to collapse. The Germans were forced into a series of desperate retreats, suffering massive losses. By early 1945, Soviet forces had advanced into Eastern Europe, setting the stage for the final assault on Berlin and the end of the Third Reich. As Allied forces advanced into German-occupied territories, they began liberating concentration camps, revealing the full extent of Nazi atrocities to the world. Camps like Auschwitz, Buchenwald, and Dachau were liberated, and the horrific conditions found there shocked the global community, cementing the Nazis' legacy as war criminals. In April 1945, Soviet forces launched their final assault on Berlin. The city was heavily defended, but after weeks of brutal street fighting, Berlin fell. On April 30, Hitler committed suicide in his bunker as Soviet troops closed in. The fall of Berlin marked the end of Nazi Germany and the war in Europe. As Berlin was encircled by Soviet forces, Adolf Hitler retreated to his bunker beneath the Reich Chancellery. On April 30, 1945, with the war lost and Germany in ruins, Hitler and his wife, Eva Braun, committed suicide. His death symbolized the collapse of the Nazi regime and the end of his destructive reign. After World War II, key Nazi leaders were tried for war crimes at the Nuremberg trials. The trials were a landmark in international law, establishing the precedent that individuals could be held accountable for crimes against humanity. 12 top Nazis were sentenced to death, and others received lengthy prison sentences. Following the war, the Allies implemented a process of denazification to remove Nazi influence from German society. This involved the dismantling of Nazi organizations, prosecution of war criminals, and re-education of the German population. The goal was to eradicate the remnants of Nazi ideology and prevent a resurgence of fascism. The Holocaust left an indelible mark on history, with the genocide of 6 million Jews and millions of others serving as a stark reminder of the dangers of unchecked hatred and totalitarianism. The survivors' stories and the evidence of the atrocities have been crucial in educating future generations and preventing similar horrors. Nazi ideology left Europe devastated, with millions dead and entire cities in ruins. The war's aftermath led to significant political and social changes, including the division of Germany, the emergence of the Cold War, and the establishment of international bodies like the United Nations aimed at preventing future conflicts. After the war, many Nazi war criminals fled Europe, seeking refuge in South America and the Middle East. However, efforts to track them down continued for decades. Notable figures like Adolf Eichmann were captured and brought to justice, serving as reminders of the enduring commitment to hold perpetrators accountable. Despite the fall of Nazi Germany, neo-Nazi movements have persisted in various parts of the world. These groups, often associated with white supremacist ideologies, continue to promote hate and violence. Governments and civil society organizations work to combat these movements, emphasizing the importance of vigilance against extremism. Nazi Germany's aggressive foreign policy reshaped global politics, leading to the formation of the Allied powers and the Axis powers. The war drew in countries from every continent, leading to widespread devastation. The aftermath of the conflict also spurred decolonization and the realignment of international power structures. Propaganda was a key tool in the Nazi regime's rise and maintenance of power. Through carefully crafted messages, symbols, and media control, the Nazis manipulated public perception, promoting their ideology and demonizing enemies. The Ministry of Propaganda, led by Joseph Goebbels, was instrumental in spreading Nazi beliefs and justifying their actions. Nazi economic policies focused on rearmament and self-sufficiency. Through state intervention, public works programs like the Autobahn, and military spending, the regime reduced unemployment and revitalized the economy. However, this economic boom was unsustainable, leading to severe strain as the war progressed, ultimately contributing to Germany's defeat. The Nazis heavily censored and manipulated art and culture to serve their ideological goals. Modern art was condemned as degenerate, and artists were persecuted or forced into exile. The regime promoted works that glorified Aryan ideals, militarism, and German history, using culture as a tool for indoctrination and propaganda. The Nazi belief in the superiority of the Aryan race was central to their ideology. This myth was supported by pseudoscientific eugenics, which aimed to create a pure Aryan population through selective breeding, sterilization, and the elimination of those deemed unfit. These policies led to horrific crimes against humanity, including forced sterilizations and mass murder. Hitler's concept of Lebensraum, living space, was a driving force behind Nazi expansionism. The regime sought to conquer Eastern Europe to provide land for the Aryan race, leading to brutal campaigns of conquest and colonization. These policies resulted in the displacement and death of millions, particularly in Poland and the Soviet Union. Nazi Germany formed key alliances with Italy and Japan, creating the Axis powers. These alliances were based on shared interests in territorial expansion and opposition to the Allied powers. The Axis powers coordinated military strategies, but differences in goals and resources ultimately weakened their effectiveness and contributed to their defeat. During World War II, Nazi Germany established puppet states and collaborated with local regimes in occupied territories. These collaborators assisted in the implementation of Nazi policies, including the persecution of Jews and political dissidents. Some regimes like Vichy France played significant roles in supporting the Nazi war effort. The Munich Agreement of 1938, signed by Germany, the United Kingdom, France, and Italy, allowed Nazi Germany to annex the Sudetenland, a region of Czechoslovakia. This policy of appeasement, aimed at avoiding war, only emboldened Hitler, demonstrating the dangers of conceding to aggressive powers and setting the stage for further Nazi expansion. The Pact of Steel was a military and political alliance signed between Nazi Germany and Fascist Italy in 1939. This agreement solidified the relationship between Hitler and Mussolini, binding the two nations to support each other in the event of war. The pact was a key element in the formation of the Axis powers. The Molotov-Ribbentrop Pact, signed in August 1939, was a non-aggression treaty between Nazi Germany and the Soviet Union. The pact shocked the world as the two ideologically opposed nations agreed to divide Eastern Europe between them. This agreement allowed Hitler to invade Poland without fear of Soviet intervention, directly leading to the outbreak of World War II. Nazi Germany's naval strategies during World War II focused heavily on submarine warfare. The U-boat campaign aimed to disrupt Allied shipping, particularly in the Atlantic. Early successes in sinking Allied vessels created significant challenges for the supply lines, but advancements in Allied anti-submarine tactics, technology, and convoy systems eventually neutralized the U-boat threat, contributing to the failure of Germany's naval strategy. The Luftwaffe, Nazi Germany's air force, played a crucial role in the blitzkrieg tactics that dominated the early years of World War II. With its combination of rapid airstrikes and ground support, the Luftwaffe helped secure swift victories in Poland, France, and the early stages of the Soviet invasion. However, as the war progressed, the Luftwaffe struggled against the superior numbers and technology of the Allied air forces, leading to heavy losses. During World War II, Nazi Germany relied heavily on forced labor to support its war effort. Millions of people from occupied countries, including prisoners of war, Jews, and other persecuted groups, were coerced into labor under brutal conditions in factories, farms, and construction projects. This exploitation was a key component of the Nazi war economy, yet it also fueled resistance and contributed to the regime's eventual downfall. The Nazi regime sought to align the arts with its ideological goals, promoting works that glorified Aryan culture while condemning and banning degenerate art, which included modernist and abstract works. Artists who refused to conform were persecuted, and many were forced into exile. The Nazis' control over cultural expression aimed to eliminate any dissent and enforce their vision of a homogeneous Aryan society. Nazi occupation had a devastating impact on Eastern Europe, particularly in Poland and the Soviet Union. The Nazis implemented harsh policies of repression, forced labor, and mass murder, including the extermination of Jews in the Holocaust. These regions suffered some of the highest casualties and destruction during the war, and the legacy of Nazi occupation left deep scars on their societies. Nazi Germany made significant advances in technology and innovation during World War II, including developments in rocketry, jet aircraft, and tanks. The V-2 rocket, for example, was the world's first long-range guided ballistic missile. However, the regime's focus on advanced weapons came at the cost of more practical military needs, contributing to the ultimate failure of the Nazi war machine. Propaganda films were a key tool used by the Nazis to spread their ideology and rally support for the regime. Filmmakers like Leni Riefenstahl created works that glorified Hitler and the Aryan race, such as Triumph of the Will. These films were used to manipulate public perception, instill loyalty, and dehumanize the regime's enemies, making them a powerful instrument of Nazi control. The Nazi regime sought to manipulate religion to support its ideology, while suppressing religious groups that opposed it. While some Christian leaders collaborated with the regime, others, including the Confessing Church in Germany, resisted Nazi control. The Nazis also promoted a form of neo-paganism, emphasizing Aryan mythology and racial purity, while persecuting religious groups that did not conform to their beliefs. The Allied bombing campaign was a crucial strategy in weakening Nazi Germany's war effort. Beginning in 1942, British and American bombers targeted industrial centers, military installations, and cities, aiming to cripple German production and morale. Cities like Dresden and Hamburg were heavily bombed, causing massive civilian casualties and destruction, but the campaign also contributed significantly to the eventual defeat of Nazi Germany. In Western Europe, Nazi occupation led to widespread repression, forced collaboration, and resistance movements. Countries like France, Belgium, and the Netherlands experienced harsh occupation policies, including the deportation of Jews to concentration camps and the exploitation of resources for the Nazi war effort. Resistance groups like the French Resistance played a crucial role in undermining the occupation and aiding the Allied liberation. After World War II, Germany was divided into 4 occupation zones controlled by the United States, the Soviet Union, Britain, and France. This division eventually led to the creation of 2 separate states: West Germany, Federal Republic of Germany, and East Germany, German Democratic Republic. This division was emblematic of the broader Cold War tensions between the Western Allies and the Soviet Union, shaping the geopolitical landscape of Europe for decades. In the post-war period, some individuals and groups sought to deny or revise the history of Nazi crimes, particularly the Holocaust. Holocaust denial and revisionism have been used to promote anti-Semitic and far-right ideologies, often claiming that the extent of Nazi atrocities was exaggerated or fabricated. These efforts have been widely condemned, and many countries have laws against Holocaust denial. The remembrance of Nazi victims, particularly those of the Holocaust, has become a vital part of post-war history and education. Memorials, museums, and educational programs around the world honor the victims and serve as a reminder of the dangers of hatred and intolerance. Sites like Auschwitz have been preserved as a testimony to the horrors of the Nazi regime, ensuring that future generations remember and learn from this dark chapter in history. The history of Nazi Germany remains highly relevant today, serving as a powerful warning against the dangers of totalitarianism, racism, and unchecked power. The lessons learned from the Nazi era continue to inform discussions on human rights, international law, and the importance of vigilance against hate and extremism. As the world confronts new challenges, the memory of Nazi atrocities reminds us of the consequences of allowing such ideologies to take root.